Hey, Brown Girl Banter.
Hey, Brown Girl Banter.
Hey, today is going to be a great topic. And we want to just like kind of introduce you to our friend, and we're going to tell you a little bit how we know
The beautiful, the wonderful Dr. Marisa White. She is amazing.
Hello, Brown Girl Banter.
Hey. So, you want to start us off? How do you know Marisa?
how I know, as I call her Dr. White, after so many years. That's because she hazed me through the whole dissertation process. But no,
Y'all hate
she actually was like probably one of my greatest champions when it came to, because we met in the doctoral program, but that was the first time that I worked like one-to-one with her. So she was my dissertation chair. So just going through that whole process and got to know her not only as my dissertation chair, but also as a friend.
Mm-hmm. Oh, me and Dr. White go back maybe like 7 years, 9 years, I don't know, a really long time. So I met her when I was doing work study for my doc program, and so I didn't think she was a very nice person. She was so like, I was like, this lady's angry. I don't know why, but she is. And I don't know, somehow I ended up in her.
You liked me.
Maybe that's what it was.
That's what it was.
And somehow I ended up in her office one day, and I swear, I don't know if I got any work done that day. They probably should have paid me for work study that day, because I'm like, just in there talking to her, and we ended up talking about life and love and babies and all the things. And from there on out, we have kind of been inseparable. I let my kids call her aunt. That's how close we really have gotten. And so I like to tell this story because, well, she'll tell a little bit more, but I don't even know what, she's from Ohio, I'm from Michigan, so that became a thing. And then somehow we started talking about race issues, which I don't know why, but we did. And then when I say she is the one who kind of like introduced me to the phrase or the word microaggression and white privilege, and like really getting to hear it from her perspective really opened my eyes to a lot of things, because you have to think, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I went to Tennessee State University, and then I moved to the DC area. So there was not really much black and white, right? It was really black for a really long time, and then once I moved to DC, it was super diverse. And so really getting this opportunity to develop a relationship with her and really get the freedom to, her to ask me stuff, me to ask her stuff, and to broaden my lens was super amazing. And so now we talk like that all the time. And so when we thought we were going to talk, hey, let's do, episode on white privilege, let's do an episode on microaggression, we thought, who better
Then Dr. White.
Dr. White. She's taught multi-cult, she's taught ethics, she's taught on the master's level, she's taught on the doc level. Now you're teaching the bachelor's level?
I teach bachelor's and master's right now.
Yeah.
So, she is definitely the ultimate educator. And she also, hopefully, is willing to be free in her discussion with the Brown Girl Banter crew today. So we've talked enough about her. We're going to let her introduce herself to you.
Hi. I am so glad to be here. I am thankful for this, but also just loving Brown Girl Banter and its I think, place to validate people's feelings, but also educate people on issues that people of color, women of color specifically, go through. I've been recommending it to my class that I taught last weekend. I was like,
sweet. So you making us celebrities.
Thanks, Brad. We love you.
but seriously, people need to understand issues that other people go through, and what better way to do that in a safe environment? They can sit at home and listen to these topics and sit and process and think about it in their safe zone. So I thank both of you for what you're doing and think that it's just awesome.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. She was also my chair. So that's probably too. We're like, bring her on. She knows the best and the worst of us.
Right.
I was thinking of that when I was thinking about doing this. I'm like, Patience has picked me up from the hospital. Patience, like, you have seen all aspects. We're coming weird.
So we were like, who better? So I think one of the things, like Lucretia and I, like I said, we always bring you into our intimate conversations.
Yeah.
And so white privilege has definitely been one of our conversations.
Yes.
And so we really, it's been a lot in the media because, there's multiple viewpoints, I would say,
Yes.
of white privilege, right? There are those who like, what is white privilege? Like you
Yes.
have the uneducated.
And
And I
doesn't-
think that's white, black, it doesn't matter
Right,
what
because
race
they
you
don't
are.
understand it.
Of truly understanding what white privilege and microaggression really is.
Yes.
I think there's that component. So it's like, what is that? Then you have those who don't think it exists.
You're right.
What?
Like it's
That's
like
not
it's no
true.
such thing as white privilege.
I
You're
work
like,
hard.
and you're like, yes, it is. If you even go into a store,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like small things, like if you're in a store and somebody and who's walking up to the cashier, and like it could be a person of color and it could be a white person walking up. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna acknowledge, and it's not that it's not purposeful, but it's like, and then when you take advantage of that knowledge instead of saying, no, she was
next.
first or she was next, but you just go. And so some people don't see, because I remember working for an agency, and we went through a training, and privilege was brought up, and we had to do the privilege walk, and then we had to talk about some things. But at that time, like initially when we went through the training, our CEO was African American, so people were afraid of what the diversity training was going to look like. But it was a very good one because it was called Glass Wings. But then the next CEO went through it without us at their headquarters, and it came back and couldn't understand why we even went through the training.
Wow. Which is so amazing to me.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you not get that? And then you have those who doesn't think it exists, and then you have those who are like all about it existing, right? Which I think all of us fall on that side of the fence. Like we're fully aware of it, we know it happens, and I think the struggle, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit more, I am trying to weed through is like I might have an understanding about how do I help the generations behind me, which includes my 2 littles, really get an understanding of, microaggression. What is that? What does that look like? How do I respond to that? And then white privilege, when my baby's feelings are hurt, or can't understand something, how do I explain that to her without diminishing her, right? The innocence.
Her identity, who she is at this time.
Right. I don't want to take that away from baby girl either. So well, baby girls, the 2-year-old child, y'all know. I talk about her too. She'll go loosey goosey. She'll be the one like, what? What? She's so about that life. My 6-year-old is a sweetie. She's super. She wears her heart on her sleeve, so it's a little harder to have those kind of discussions with her. So anyway, what are your thoughts, my love, on white privilege, on microaggression, on, you have littles. Well, you have one little, couple
I have
bigs.
a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and now a grandbaby. So I got a bunch of they're all over the place. I think first off, kind of like you said, because there's such a wide range of some people don't know what it is versus others who know it, know examples. I think first off to say, like, what is it? And I heard a real good phrase that it's like this benefits package. So if you think you're going to work, and because you work there, you get a benefits package. And with white privilege, it's a benefits package that you get without any work. So certain people get this benefit package just for whatever characteristic it is, whether it's white, whether it's male, whether it's Christian, whether it's education. So there's a bunch of different privileges. And then on top of that, some people, specifically women of color, because of the intersectionality, they don't have privilege on 2 different levels. So I think it's important to, one, know, like, it is just this benefit or, I guess, an easier way and for no earned reason. And then when I think about microaggression, I think, okay, we used to, I think we still do, but people say. We used to have this overt racism, and then it became not politically correct to have overt racism. So now there's all these covert ways to keep people in their place, and that is the microaggressions. So microaggressions sometimes doesn't have necessarily a bad intention, and it is people are unaware of things that they're doing to insult or slight a particular group.
Yeah.
And then you have from there, I think it goes like micro assault or whatever. So that's where you're saying things with some intent, and then that blatant racism. So it's no, racism hasn't went anywhere, which we already know, but there's different types that we're doing, and needing to understand the negative impact of the microaggressions can be just as severe as the blatant racism.
That's very true. And I mean, I believe, and I never say I'm always right because I'm not, that ignorance is bliss, right? So if I am not forced ever to learn,
to be questioned about it.
Exactly. So if I'm not ever in this place where it's forced upon me to learn about your culture, to learn about your identity, to learn about your struggles, then why? Why? Because
why do I need to learn if I'm not exposed?
Exactly, because I feel like, and I say this to clients, nobody likes to be uncomfortable.
No, because it's difficult conversations, especially when it comes to having to do your own self-awareness and look at your own biases. Because especially I could come from like a Christian standpoint. It's like, oh no, I don't have any biases. And then you're like, oh yeah.
As a Christian, I do.
Right. You don't want to seem like it's this bad judgmental person when it happens. We're human beings, and so we tend to be bent a certain way because it comes from family of origin, it comes from growing up, it's our lens, how we see the world.
Right. And I don't know, I feel like that is kind of this. So, I mean, I'm trying to decide if I want to tell this story, but I'm going to tell this story as.
So yes, you want to tell the story.
As
sanitized.
Right, like as I can. So, my child just went to kindergarten, and so we do a tour, right? You're deciding, do we want to do public? Do we want to do Christian private? Do we want to just do private? What do we want to do for our sweet child? And so we tour these schools, and some are in the suburbs and some are in the city. And so one of the big things we wanted for our child was diversity, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so long story made super short, cutting out the details in the middle, we visited a school, we loved the school, but it was no diversity there. And so I just couldn't do it. But one of the most interesting things is I have a friend who works there, and my friend said that she went to a big assembly maybe they had in the, I don't know, whatever, gym. And she's like, I looked around the room and it was kind of like, this isn't the real world. Oh my goodness, like my kids are here, like, and what are they absorbing because what they're seeing isn't real. And so in that moment, I think it was her aha moment, right? Of like this lack of diversity and what that was teaching her child or children. And what I realized in that moment was like, one, if I sent my child there, this false sense of something she would get or not get, because I don't know how people are going to treat her. I have to be really candid about that, right? The covert or, the ignorance is bliss component of touching hair or saying mean things. Like, I don't know. And so I have to be super aware of that. But I also feel like during that season, my friend, where ignorance was okay, right? Where she was like, no, this is cool. We're white. We're just going to this school with only white people, and this is great. I think in that moment, she got
That's when she had her aha moment.
Like, this isn't.
Like, it's not the real world. This is not what the real world looks like.
Right. And they felt rejection from that. That we were, as a family, like, and we're not coming here because of that, And I think that, yes, I don't think I have to be the stand-in Black representation of privilege and, microaggression, but I also feel like if I need to educate you, which we did, I will gladly come and do that, because you need understanding, right? Because what you might teach my child that she can walk into and do and who she can be in certain scenarios and situations
may not be true to her.
Might not be true to her, but how will you even know to teach her anything else?
Yeah, because it's all you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that is But I think ignorance is bliss. I'm still going to stick with that. I think like if I don't have to know it and then I get to enjoy my privilege because it is a luxury and I don't have to change, right? Like that's just my belief system.
Well, I think for me it ties into the episode that y'all did on code switching and talking about like I don't have to code switch, so I can still be successful and not do that. Just like I can still be successful and not talk about microaggression, not think about it, not accept my role in it, not analyze where I have put those aggressions onto people. I can be successful and live in that bubble. Whereas other people, specifically people in marginalized groups, they can't and be successful. They have to take on these extra roles, whether that's code switching, whether it's thinking about where my child goes to school, or all of these extra components that the privileged groups never or can choose, because I believe it's a choice, can choose to never think about and never analyze and even use their privilege to make that gap even worse. Because I struggle with, okay, so I have this privilege, what do I do with it? And specifically since the Black Lives Matters movement, here's me being vulnerable, prepare, is saying, okay, realize that I have a voice in that movement, but not to allow my voice to overshadow the people in the movement. So be there as an ally, but know my role. Step back, be present. You don't have to have a loud voice, just your presence. And finding that balance, because I know that I have privilege, so how can I use that in a positive way, but without overstepping on people, because then it's just doing the microaggressions all over again. And it's like an interesting dance for me that I didn't realize when I was younger. I think some of it comes with age and some of it comes with just learning and reading research and you know, all of those experiences. But that has been interesting to me, is for me to, how do I explain to my students or my children, or how do I think about how to use my privilege in a way that helps equity or helps equality or helps social justice without taking over those movements. Does that make sense?
Instead of
a lot of sense.
Barging in and saying, hey, it needs to be done this way, or getting it to like kind of fold into you.
Right, because then that's just doing the same thing over again.
Yes.
So how do I have this balance to be an ally to underrepresented populations, noticing my privilege, but still examining that, because like you said, we have bias, whether I have Christian bias or male-female bias, you know, all of those sort of components.
And being able to own up to those biases, the biases that we all have, because I never thought about it, because one of my friends brought to my attention, she said, look, you have privilege not only in education, she said, but your privilege also goes with you were raised by both of your parents and your dad was active in your life. So you see the world
through that lens.
When you say, oh, I don't understand that. And she's like, you don't have to understand. You didn't have to understand it because your situation was different. So that kind of goes back to.
Well, I think that's where, when you talked about some people don't believe it, I think that's where when the white people who are like, this doesn't exist, or I don't have white privilege, and I've heard many of people say that, I think that they have suffered or been marginalized in one particular area. So say they were raised in poverty. So they might have been raised around a bunch of minorities. They were raised in poverty. They don't internalize this, I am privileged.
Right.
But not realizing that they can watch TV and they can go in the store and people look like them. That the media doesn't depict them in a negative manner. It's like, no, that's still privilege. But I was poor. But I grew up like, yes, because there are lots of areas of privilege, but you still have something afforded to you just when you wake up.
Because you are who you are.
You are light skinned.
Yes.
Because
and I think you can even say that within, like, intercultural.
Yes.
Like if you have light skinned versus dark skinned women of color, and who has more privilege in that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's definitely a discussion within the race of
Yes.
that. I mean,
That's
that's
another episode.
or a
We'll have another
different
conversation about
day.
that.
But I totally think that. And so I had a question for you. So they don't know, but your dissertation, Dr. White, was on social justice.
It was.
Why did you choose social justice for that?
Well, I think I've always been interested in it. I've thought this a lot of times. I was raised by a feminist, liberal, single parent. I was in poverty. I went to an all-white farming school.
Okay.
I remember one black kid who was targeted, like KKK written on his locker, like everything. And I just didn't fit in. I always went to this other town and hung out with people of color, and I was like that person who never fit in. My whole life I've kind of felt like that. And I think part of that is like how I was raised. I wasn't raised like the other kids in my community. And then I think that interest in marginalized populations just grew through education and friendships that I made and experiences. And once I got to the doctorate level, I'm like, okay, what are we doing to advocate? And how is advocacy impacting us? I'm a counselor by trade. So how is it impacting me as, like, what am I doing to advocate? And how did I get this identity? So I wanted to look at how counselors identify as advocates. Mine was a qualitative study where I interviewed people and said, how did you become an advocate? And what did that mean to you? And I mean, I think it was interesting. But
It was.
right. For it to, I mean, if you looked back and I have this old, my guidance counselor at the time, I know they're school counselors now, my guidance counselor, right?
Please.
She wrote me a letter and she said that she always fights for the underdogs. And this was like in 11th grade.
Okay.
And then I'm going on to my dissertation at like 29, I think I was. And now I'm doing a research study on why people do that. So I think it's been part of my purpose. I don't know if it's a
Your
God
journey.
gift or I don't know what it is. And then, of course, I have children of color. So that just further emphasizes it gives me a different level of understanding. I know specifically when you will hear, like, I saw these memes on Facebook that said, I can't relax, I have black sons, or, you'll never understand if you're not a black mom. And I'm like, maybe it is yes, I obviously don't understand what it's like to be a black mom, but I do understand what it's like to have black sons.
Yes.
And to say, oh my gosh, he's calling me after he gets pulled over because he was worried about being shot. Or having that conversation with my other son. You can't just walk through people's backyards. Your friends can, because we live in a primarily white community, and his friends are allotted things, and having that conversation with him that maybe other white mothers haven't had to, but I'm a white mother, and having an understanding that black mothers have, but not all the understanding. So it's this weird dynamic of balance for me. But
you do it well, friend. You do it well.
I don't know.
But I mean, I have a friend too who has children of color, and when he described to me, like, his children ran out in front of him in the mall, let's say, or in a store. And so he's white, and he's like watching people follow them or monitor them or look at them a particular way, and how that pierced him, you know?
Okay.
And I think how moments come like that too, of like, I've never had to worry about that. I've never had to think about that. That was never something that impacted me growing up or my friends. And then to know that the only reason that you are following my sons who are doing absolutely nothing
because of their skin color.
It's because of the color of their skin, right? And so in that moment, I think it's when you start to have, as a parent who has children of color, you start to go like, what the, this is the injustices of the world just because a person was born a different race, So I think that it is, I call certain friends that I have that are white my woke friends. So, my woke, my woke white friends who really have a clear understanding of that and who aren't afraid, which we appreciate because we do appreciate appreciate the advocacy of that.
Yes.
I think we look for it as people of color though too. Like if
Who is our ally? Who's standing? Who's willing to step out there and be on the battle line in some form or fashion?
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think so. I appreciate those who can have those conversations.
That's willing to have those conversations and educate, and especially in your role as an educator. You not only take it out, you take it in the classroom, but you also are willing to step outside the classroom and help other people understand.
Why do you think that, both of you, I think my biggest question always, and this is when you should not go on Twitter. I'm just saying, people, don't go on Twitter and don't read the comment section. Like,
oh no,
that'll
take you on a whole different level.
Turned up, man. I be like so hot, like I don't know this person, but I am so responding to this tweet or this comment. Somebody gonna come for me. I know it. It's okay. But the over this blanket statement that I don't think white privilege exists. How can you be so is that like you said, it's a choice, but like, is it ignorance? Is it just, I don't know. It just pisses me off when I start going into people's comments and leaving really educational messages.
It is, like you said, ignorance is bliss.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if I say that it's real, one, I have to examine myself, and that's hard. And then I have to admit
do something about
that I didn't get where I am with hard work.
Yeah.
And in white culture, what do? We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We are hardworking. That's a core value. So if I say that I got here where I am because of something that I didn't work for, then you are taking that core value away from me. And that sometimes people aren't in a place, in a season, in a whatever, to have that core value challenged or to think about it. And that's what I believe.
Because as hearing you say it, and then you're like, that's a core value, and it makes me think about those. We have some of the same core values because we say we pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, that we have to work doubly hard to get to a place that who's earning what? I guess.
But if I said you didn't, but if I said you didn't get into college, you got there for affirmative action.
Yes.
That would be, it's the same, to me,
It's
similar to you got there because you're white.
Yeah.
What you did.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're not ready for that.
Yeah.
And I think there are some people who will never be ready.
And
there are
there's
other
more.
people who will have experiences, whether that's through a grandbaby or through a child or through a best friend that they see get followed around, and they're like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, I didn't know this will happen. I think for me, I feel blessed that I had those experiences earlier in life, so that I can use my education platform or whatever it is to get people to start critically thinking. I mean, that's what I do for a living is, hey, you need to think critically about this issue, whether it's mental illness, whether it's feminism, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whatever that topic is.
So, that was good. You're so smart.
So,
We're doctors, all of us.
yes. So I guess this is where we bring our conversation to an end. We want to thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you came. That was so good. I
I'm so glad
appreciate
y'all had
you.
me.
Yes.
Yes.
So, Brown Girl Banter, we are heading out of here. Thanks for tuning in. I am Dr. Patience.
And I am Dr. Dangerfield. And as always, leave your comments at the bottom. Please tell us what you thought, what you think. What are your comments? What has been your experience?
What has been your experience?
Just as always, we always like to keep the conversation going.
Exactly. So until next time, enjoy your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, Brown Girl Banter.
Bye.